Welcome to Module 10, entitled Now I See What You Mean, Using Visual Cues to Implement Class Management and Prevent Behavior Issues. This module is based on the Read It Once Again's Preschool Classroom Management Teacher's Resource Guide. Sometimes you observe situations and behaviors that are caused because of a young child's inability to process language. Young children are visual learners. Providing visual cues will help children process and file auditory information. Many young children, especially those with autism, think in pictures and benefit from visual cues. Visual cues are the stepping stones to creating receptive and expressive language. Meet Doris. Doris has been teaching preschool for 30 years. She is set in her ways of teaching. She doesn't understand how to teach children who have difficulty processing language or those with sensory issues. Throughout this training module, she will constantly question our suggestions and teaching strategies. It's our goal to show Doris the benefits of using visual cues to help children improve their language skills and manage their behavior issues. In the world of education, teachers and therapists tend to use terms that are unfamiliar. We have to be careful, especially when communicating with parents. In this case, Doris wants to know, what are visual cues? The simple explanation is that visual cues are just another way of saying pictures. You can see by the look on Doris's face that she's not sure why visual cues are so important in the classroom. We're going to show Doris how visual cues can provide structure and consistency in the classroom. Visual cues also help to organize daily activities. Visual cues can be used to promote positive experiences in classroom behavior and build friendships and positive relationships with classmates. The most common reason children are referred to special needs classrooms is because of language or cognitive delays. The second most common reason is because of behavior issues that cause them to be removed from childcare or other preschool classrooms. We'll show Doris how to use visual cues to prevent behavior issues. Let's begin by giving Doris some suggestions that will help the children manage their behavior. Typically, when we think about providing structure in your classroom for children, we might begin by looking at the daily schedule and classroom organization. And they are both a vital part of Read It Once Again's strategy for classroom management. But first, we're going to suggest that you begin by organizing your children. Every child in your classroom is assigned an animal symbol. It's fine to use objects rather than animals. Starting on page 26, our Preschool Classroom Management Guide provides graphics for 25 different animals. We will need to show Doris some of the things that her children will learn from using the animal symbols in the classroom. The first simple foundational skill that children can learn is color identification. Here's a tip if you're going to use the animal graphics provided in our Preschool Classroom Management Guide. Even though each guide comes with a CD containing all of the images in color, we suggest using the black and white graphics and copying them on colored paper. It will save your printer ink. The next simple foundational skill your children will learn is animal identification. The next few slides will give Doris many suggestions as to how the animal symbols can be used throughout the classroom. Be thinking of your own classroom environment and think of other ways the animals can be used to help your children. Our first suggestion to Doris is to create a circle time or greeting board used to identify who is present and who is absent. Complete instructions for creating and using your greeting boards are found on pages 19 through 22 in our Preschool Classroom Management Guide. The first board A will be the same as the storyboard found in Appendix A. The first board A will have Velcro, and the teacher places the animals with the child's picture on the Velcro strip. The second board, B, will already have animal symbols covered with clear contact paper and a Velcro dot above the animal. There are no faces placed on the animals found on storyboard B. During circle time, the child chooses his animal with the child's picture from board A and places it on the same animal on board B. After each child has had a turn finding and matching their animals, the group is able to visually see who is in class today and who is missing. Refer to pages 19 through 22 in our preschool classroom management guide for additional suggestions and songs that can be used with these activities. Notice on board A, we attached the animal with a picture of each child. Look at the picture on the frog and the cow. The photo of just the child's face is easier to identify. The Preschool Classroom Management Guide provides simple black line drawings of animals that provide room for photos of the child's face. The animal symbols combined with the face is only necessary for use on board A. Many preschool classrooms have a morning and an afternoon session. This allows teachers to use the same animal symbols throughout the classroom in both morning and afternoon sessions. Children become attached to their animal symbols and quickly learn the animals of their classmates as well. Using board A with the child's photo also provides the opportunity to teach name identification. For very young children or at the beginning of the year, we use just their picture. For older children or those who have made progress mid-year, we can begin adding the name to the photo. On page 51 of the Preschool Classroom Management Guide, we provide you with empty name tag templates so that you can add the name to the photo. Name tags are attached by using Velcro or tape. The teacher has the option of beginning by using the first name and adding the last name at a later date. Some teachers begin by using just the first letter of the first name. Children will often identify classmates by their animal symbol. Graham is an orange cat. Will is a blue dog. Brian is a red cow. Ethan is a green frog. We suggest that in the beginning of the year you provide a newsletter that shares the first names along with the animal symbols for parent information. It will help the child communicate at home. Use the animal symbols to mark each child's personal space. This is an example of how using the animals help children find their own cubby. You may have a classroom duty chart. In this case, Will, the blue dog, is the classroom greeter. Brian, the red cow, gets to feed the fish. Ryan, the yellow duck, has to pass out the milk. And Terry, the green turtle, will pass out napkins and straws. The jobs and symbols can be changed as necessary. Here is a suggestion to organize your center activities. Label the center with a visual cue and provide Velcro dots according to the number of children that you allow in that area. Depending on the structure of your classroom, you can allow children to choose their center, or if you have specific activities planned for each child, the teacher can place the animal symbols in the appropriate center. The Preschool Classroom Management Guide provides both big and little animal symbols. All symbols are also included in Word format in color and in black and white on the color CD. If you need the animal symbols to be larger or smaller, you can simply right-click on the symbol, place it on a new page in Word, and resize it to meet your exact needs. Have you ever asked your children to line up by the door? The result is often a cluster of children bumping into each other, which promotes chaos. In your direction, there are many abstract concepts. What is a line? Where is by the door? Some children are still trying to label the object as a door. Here is the perfect solution that can prevent multiple behavior problems. Create a set of floor squares. You can put the printout of the animal in the center of a 12 by 12 square of matting board, canvas art panel, or similar material and cover with contact paper. If you place them on carpeting, put Velcro on the back to keep them from slipping. If you place them on the hard flooring, put rubber shelf lining on the back to keep them from sliding. Before asking children to line up, you or your assistant should place the floor squares exactly where you want the children to stand. You can prevent a multitude of behavior problems with these simple tips. Allow plenty of room between squares, especially if children are going home wearing backpacks. You want to avoid accidental, unexpected touching or bumping whenever possible. You can predetermine who will be the line leader. You know that some personalities should not be placed side by side. For example, yellow duck should never stand next to orange tiger. Floor squares can be used on the rug for group circle time. Again, the teacher has the option of arranging where children should sit and who they sit next to. A question often asked is what happens when a child would rather play with his floor square than sit on it. Know that children become very attached to their animal symbols. It's their unique identity and very special to them. If the teacher has to take the floor square away for that activity, they will be the only child without their animal. The animal is returned the next day, and in most cases, that solves the problem. If your children sit in chairs for group time, you can use the same animal to label the chairs on the front or the back. Cover with clear contact paper. Again, the teacher can manipulate these seating arrangements. Putting their animal symbols on a placemat at a table provides a great way to transition into snack time or dinner time. They know exactly where to sit, and the teacher can predetermine the placement of the animals. Animal symbols can be used anywhere children need help defining spaces: library, assemblies, cafeteria, field trips. Meet Ethan. Ethan is about to join our classroom. You may meet Ethan's parents at an IEP meeting, home visit, or they might visit your classroom before enrolling Ethan in your program. Whenever you meet Ethan or his parents, always make it a point to let them know that Ethan's animal symbol is going to be, in this case, a green frog. Give Ethan a large green frog symbol to take home with them so that Ethan will be very familiar with the green frog in his first day of school. When Ethan enters the classroom, show him all the green frogs on the chairs, floor squares, cubbies, and other places that you're using animal symbols. This instantly lets Ethan know that this is his classroom and provides a comfort level. Do you have a wild child during playtime? This is the child that dumps toys without playing with them, runs around the room with no purpose, can't make choices of what center he wants to play in, doesn't play well with others and often disrupts his classmates, has a very short attention span, constantly going from one toy to the next. Obviously, to Doris, this child is a troublemaker. Let's give her a few suggestions to help prevent the wild behavior. The first thing that I would like to ask Doris is what she could do to prevent some of the behavior issues. We first talked about organizing her children. Now let's look into how she physically organizes her classroom. At a first glance, most people would prefer to see a classroom like the one pictured on the top photo. The room appears to be neatly organized with tables and shelves along the wall and a nice open carpeted area in the middle for group activities. The bottom classroom is actually the better choice for setting up the physical space in your classroom. What's wrong with the first choice? There's too much open space with no dividers to define individual centers. Open space encourages children to run wild. Creating boundaries for center activities provides structure and requires children to practice their gross motor planning skills. They must plan to maneuver around the appropriate placed furniture to get to their destination. Keep in mind that as you structure your classroom centers, make sure that you can see across the top of the furniture in the entire classroom to ensure the safety of your children. If you are fortunate enough to have a classroom with an abundance of toys, rotate some of the toys from time to time. Having too many choices visually displayed can be overwhelming for some children. Also, rotating toys helps to motivate and keep your classroom interesting. Which picture is easier on your eye? Obviously, the bottom picture demonstrates an organized system of helping children visually see where objects should be stored. Avoid using toy boxes. While it may be easier just to put all the objects into one box, you're missing a great opportunity to teach the language skills of object identification, matching, and one-to-one correspondence. Here's an example of how to label your shelves. This is not only a great tool for cleanup time, but it teaches the language skills previously mentioned. Labeling your shelves may take hours of preparation, but it is part of your preschool curriculum that addresses the very first of the Super 20 foundational skills, which is labeling objects. When you're working with nonverbal infants or children, this practice is matching an object to a picture. To obtain appropriate pictures, take a close-up picture with your camera, use a picture from the container it came in, Google the image, or find a picture in a coloring book and color it to match the object. Use clear contact paper to put over the picture and secure it to the shelf. If you're like most preschool teachers, there are never enough hours in the day. Things get tossed on your desk or work area that you simply do not have time to deal with right at that moment. Working with your children is your first priority, and before you know it, your workspace is a mountain of clutter. This clutter can be visually distracting to your students. Covering shelves with plain fabric may be one solution for you. Using tubs or bins might be another solution to add organization to your work area. As you organize the physical space in your classroom, think about where a child can go in your classroom to block out light, sound, and other types of overstimulation. This is not a space to be used as timeout or punishment. This is a place that can be used to help a child find refuge from sensory overload. We will discuss sensory issues in the upcoming slides, but for now, as you physically are preparing your classroom space, we want you to think about how and where you can provide a haven for a sensory needy child. We've pictured a couple of solutions. It does not have to be expensive or elaborate. A large appliance box is a simple solution. We've found that very few preschool teachers have time to sit at their desks. The space under your desk may provide just the space you were looking for. Wait is an evil four-letter word. Doris is upset again. Every time I ask my class to wait, there always seems to be trouble. Why does this happen? Waiting, for young children, is difficult because this is unstructured time. Many times they physically do not know where they need to be. Often directions are auditory and the child cannot process the spoken information. If they are asked to wait beside the table, they may not understand the position concept of beside. Anxiety arises for some children when they don't know what is going to happen next. Let's give Doris a few tips that might help her children. Always prepare all the materials necessary for a group activity. If Doris forgets to have the paintbrushes ready and she walks away to find the brushes, young children will not stand calmly and wait for her to return with the materials. Chaos will most likely happen, and Doris, this was your fault, not the children's. Many children cannot process auditory directions and become anxious when they do not understand direction or what will happen next. Our teacher's directions are to come inside from the playground, wait by the door, and they would have a snack. In this situation, the teacher has used a familiar picture of snack time taken from their visual schedule. She uses her auditory directions along with the visual cue to help the children with this transition. Our teacher's direction was to come inside from the playground and wait by the door. The children saw the sign and knew it was time for a snack. Now comes the instruction to wait by the door. Wait where? This is where your floor squares come in as a visual cue for the children to see exactly where they are expected to stand while they wait for all of the children to assemble in a line by the door. Even with the floor squares to provide a visual cue for your children to find their place in line, waiting can still become difficult for some. This is when they need you or your assistant to be the additional visual cue standing at the front of the line. Always face your children to provide eye contact. Then, sing a familiar song or say a familiar rhyme. The key word here is familiar. This is not the time to introduce new language. Choose a song or a rhyme that requires hand motion. The goal is to keep both the brain and hands busy with a fun, familiar song as they are waiting. Meet Henry. Henry is your wild child who has frequent tantrums and meltdowns. He doesn't play well with others, won't follow directions, and constantly disrupts group time activities. Henry has probably been referred to your class because of behavior issues that have caused him to be removed from other preschool settings. Doris is looking at Henry's actions solely as a behavior issue. There are some circumstances where behavior is the primary issue, but in this case, let's help Doris investigate some of the other reasons that Henry may be having behavior problems. Many children come into your classroom with sensory integration issues. Watch for these red flags that will give you the insight to some of the behaviors you observe throughout the day. Your observations are especially important for children who have little or no expressive language to relate their feelings. Some children are sensitive to sight and the inability to process and organize what they see. Taking in too much visually can be overwhelming, especially if there is no organization or structure. Another sensory issue is the touch of the skin or an unexpected touch, especially from behind. Floor squares help to give children personal space to prevent the unexpected touch from a child standing too close to them. An unexpected touch to a child with a sensory issue can jolt them into a fight or flight automatic response from the brain, causing an outburst that to an untrained teacher looks like an intentional bad behavior. A child who is sensitive to touch may also be very particular about the clothes he or she wears. They may complain about shirt labels being irritating and itchy. Another red flag in this area is a child who refuses to participate in activities where their fingers or hands are exposed to shaving cream, paint, sand, mud, slime, or other unfamiliar substances. It's not unusual for some children to be supersensitive to sounds in the environment around them. They simply are unable to filter out certain noise frequencies. It could be a lawnmower mowing outside, an air conditioner running in a window across the room, or an airplane flying overhead. Even the sound of children playing in the classroom can be too overwhelming and can keep some children from being able to focus on assigned tasks. More and more children have aversion to the taste and texture of different foods. In the daily living section of every Level 1 unit, you will find a large section of recipes that are based on the story and offer a variety of different foods. Children are more motivated to try different foods, tastes, and textures when they are related to the story. What may smell pleasant to you and others can be problematic to children who are sensitive to a variety of different odors. Their ability to detect smells is magnified and can cause them to have headaches and upset stomachs, making it difficult to focus on learning. We recommend that teachers refrain from wearing perfumes or using strong scented body washes. It's tempting to use air fresheners in the classroom. Whenever possible, use these products at the end of the day when the children are not present. Use an unscented freshener or provide fresh air by opening a window. We don't often think about motion as being part of sensory integration. Here are some red flags you can look for that may indicate issues with gross motor movement, balance, and awareness of their body position. Clumsiness or may fall often. Poor balance. Poor coordination. May stand too closely to others. Have challenges with certain movements such as swinging or going downstairs. Children without means to filter out overstimulation will often explode or shut down. Unfortunately, many children with sensitive sensory systems have a combination of sensory issues happening all at the same time. Visual cues and repetition help children to organize information and improve concentration. Often, your occupational therapist has been trained in sensory issues and can serve as an excellent source of information and suggestions. Well, Doris, we've shared some of the sensory red flags you should be looking for as you observe behaviors in your classroom. Let's give you some more suggestions for how to help prevent outbursts and meltdowns. Our goal is to identify the possible causes and provide interventions that promote positive behavior and boost your children's self-esteem. Earlier, we mentioned setting up your classroom and making sure that you provide space where a child could go help block out some of the sensory input that he or she is not able to process. It's important to remember that this is not a place to go for timeout or a means of punishment. Make sure that the area is large enough because an adult may need to spend some calming time in the quiet area with the child. It's not intended to be used as a play area for multiple children. First, observe the child. If you notice that he or she is headed for a meltdown, gently guide them to the quiet area and provide a favorite calming device that can be used in the area. Each child is different, so be prepared to have multiple options easily available near the quiet area. Here are some suggestions of things that may be appropriate for your quiet time box. Headphones with familiar and favorite music. This music should be quiet and calming. Create a playlist of calming music that can be used during center time, snack time, nap time, and in the quiet area. Headphones, if the child will tolerate wearing them, will muffle the noises of the classroom, and familiar music calms the active brain. Pillows and carpets add comfort. Weighted blankets and weighted stuffed animals help to ground a child's overloaded sensory system. Favorite and familiar books can be soothing. A favorite and familiar toy can help distract and provide comfort. Before entering the quiet area, have the child describe how they feel. When language is limited, you may need to provide describer words or even pictures with facial emotions. After the child has had a chance to calm himself, have him describe how he feels before he joins the rest of the class. You may need again to provide describer words or facial picture cues. Many children have no idea how to express emotion or even describe how they feel. One of the most powerful lessons you have to give your children is the ability to recognize when they are upset and give them the tools to learn how to calm themselves. This social skill is vital if they're going to be successful in a pre- or regular kindergarten setting. Consider having a rice pool in your classroom. Using rice in the sand or water table is an acceptable option, but we've found that purchasing a hard-sided wading pool and filling it with 2 to 3 20-pound bags of rice allows children to actually sit in the pool as they would in a sandbox. Rice does not cling to the body like sand. Using the pool allows an entire body sensory experience for a soothing touch. Many speech therapists will often conduct therapy sessions in the rice pool, as it seems to have a direct link to expanding receptive and expressive speech. We suggest putting the pool in a secluded corner and placing it on carpeting. Limit the number of children to only 2 at a time in the pool. It's inevitable that some of the rice will find its way out of the pool, and it can be dangerously slippery on a bare floor. Always keep a small broom and dustpan handy for easy cleanup. The benefits of using a rice pool in your classroom far outweigh the inconvenience of having to clean up in that area. Have you ever discovered that your children know how to start or go, but sometimes have trouble understanding the abstract concept of stop? Every gross motor section of all Read It Once Again Level 1 units will have a stop and start activity. Stopping a particular action or activity is a skill that needs to be taught and practiced by young children. Here is an example of a start and stop activity found in the Level 1 unit based on If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. Graphics are provided that relate to the story. In this case, they are different colored crayons used by the mouse as he is drawing pictures of his family. The teacher places graphics from the story on the floor and begins to play music. The children are encouraged to dance or make gross motor movements along with the music. Suddenly the music stops. When the music stops, the children must find a graphic and stand on the picture. They are encouraged to identify the picture object or color the object that they have chosen to stand on. After everyone has stopped, the music begins again and the start and stop process is repeated. Unlike the game of musical chairs, this game is not intended to be competitive with only one winner. The goal in this activity is to master the concept of being able to stop when directed. You may want to begin with using the visual cue of the stop sign when you say the word stop. Eventually take away the stop sign and practice concentrating on just your oral direction to stop. Children are full of energy, especially when they've been outside or are participating in an activity where they are exposed to a multitude of sensory stimulations. Dimming your classroom lights can be one way to lower your child's energy level. This is especially true if your classroom is lit with fluorescent light bulbs. Some children are extremely sensitive to the flickering of the bulbs or the high pitch that they emit. Most of us are unaware of the flickering light or the sounds from these bulbs. It is especially important to remember not to use the on-off switch to flicker classroom lights in order to gain your students' attention. This is painful for children who are sensitive to bright lights. Music can be a very powerful positive tool that will help change behaviors in the classroom. Many children have a very difficult time transitioning from high-energy activities to a quiet group time situation where they are being asked to sit quietly and focus. You can use music as a transition tool. Pick a song that is familiar, such as If You're Happy and You Know It. Sing the first verse fast and loud, with lively body motions like stomp your feet. This matches the high energy level they are experiencing at the moment. Sing the second verse a bit softer and choose a quieter motion like clap your hands. This will bring the energy down one notch. For the third verse, sing in a normal voice and sing the melody at a slower pace. Include a quiet body motion such as pat your head. The fourth verse should be sung very slowly in a quiet voice with a simple action such as touch your nose. The last verse should be sung even slower and at a whisper. End with a quiet action such as close your eyes. Whichever song you choose, start singing fast and loud. Every verse should get slower and softer, helping the children to slow their body and brains to a state of quiet and calm where they are ready to focus. Music can also set the mood of your classroom. Create a playlist of soft, slow-tempo, easy-listening music, preferably instrumental. Play it during center time, snack time, or any portion of the day that does not require a child to concentrate on your academic instructions. The goal is for the subconscious brain to program itself to remove anxiety and provide a calm state of being. Create 2 or 3 playlists and rotate them if necessary. The key is to keep the music familiar. You can use music to create the opposite effect. If you need to motivate and help children release excess energy, provide familiar music with high energy combined with body movements. This is especially helpful if children have been attentive for an extended period during circle time. Every Level 1 unit has a section containing rhymes, songs, and finger plays relating to the story. Singing a song full of gross motor movements at the end of story time is the perfect way to get children up and moving. There are times that a child shows up at your classroom door and your instincts instantly tell you that this child is beyond being able to be calmed by the quiet box, rice pool, or soft music. For any number of reasons, his sensory system is already on high alert. Your classroom is full of noisy visual energy. If he enters your classroom, it will most likely result in a tantrum and meltdown, which will affect your whole class. Even worse, we have just set this child up for an unnecessary outburst. For these situations, always have Plan B in your back pocket, ready to be instantly implemented. Work closely with your assistant to establish behavior solutions that can be implemented immediately with a code word or even a head nod. In this case, Plan B means that either the paraprofessional or the teacher will meet Johnny at the door with a heavy stack of books. Inviting Johnny into the classroom is going to be a disaster if he is already on sensory overload and headed for a meltdown. This will affect the other students and is not a good way for Johnny or the other students to begin their day. Asking Johnny to carry a heavy load of books is a sensory tool that helps to ground the child's sensory system. As you are slowly walking down the hall, attempt to help Johnny identify his emotions and the possible cause. Keep walking and talking and taking detours as necessary until you can see that Johnny has begun to gain control of his emotions. This is an extreme example, but the point is that if your students are loud and not paying attention, it will do you no good to raise your voice trying to be heard. Noisy, non-attentive children can also be a problem during group activities. If they are all making noise, it is likely that the teacher will talk louder to gain their attention. In most cases, that causes the children to become louder, and very soon the situation is in chaos. Suddenly, from behind a basket or from a hidden shelf, appears the teacher's best friend, a puppet. It can be one used especially at group time, or you may want to choose a puppet related to your story unit. The puppet whispers a secret into your ear. You answer the puppet with a conversation about someone or something. Perhaps you can joke or have the puppet whisper to you that your assistant is sleeping, or that someone has their shirt on backwards. Continue to have a loud whisper conversation with the puppet. This distraction will instantly bring the noise level down to a whisper, and instead of chaos, you now have the group's undivided attention. Doris says, "My children don't listen. I don't always have a cute little puppet handy. Can you give me another suggestion?" First of all, Doris, do not confuse not listening with not understanding. Let's try to help Doris figure out if her children are choosing not to listen, or do they not understand her directions. Be aware of your auditory directions. For some children, oral directions evaporate into the air like steam before they can process them. At this stage of development, children are still learning to process language. Be aware that this teacher is using only auditory directions. She has a group of children with mixed language levels who may or may not have the receptive skills to understand her directions. Before assuming a child's behavior is non-compliant, use these strategies to help determine if the child understands your directions. You may need to reduce your language to meet the individual needs of each child. One child could comprehend the entire directive, "It's time for snack, come find your seat." For the next child, you may need to reduce the number of words so that they hear, "Time for snack, come sit." Another child's direction would be, "Come sit," or just the word sit. Reduce language with visual cues. Use your visual schedule with the auditory directions to help children understand directions. We will be talking more about the visual classroom schedule later in this module. Provide motivation and a visual cue for your visual schedule with directions. Choose a motivation that is meaningful to each child, such as, "We are going outside to play, you need to get in line." Or you may need to reduce the language to just "get in line." The direction is, "Put away toys." The motivation, along with the visual cue, is, "It's time for a snack." You can reduce the number of words to just "snack time." Go where the child is in the room. Sit or kneel so that you and the child are at the same level. It's difficult for children to hear commands shouted across the room or to respond to someone towering above them. Touch the child on the shoulder to get them to look at you. For some children, it's important to make eye contact before giving direction. Do not startle by approaching the child from behind. Call the child's name before giving a direction or asking a question. "David, shut the door, please." Always give direction in a positive form. Instead of saying, "Stop running," use a positive direction such as "walk" or "please walk." Replace "no hitting" with "hands down." Use physical prompting to support directions such as holding a child's hand to help guide her to an appropriate location. Be a good listener yourself. Children model what they see and hear. When a child is talking to you, pay attention. Every time we try to change activities, the kids go wild. Why? Well, it appears that Doris is confused again. Let's see how visual cues can help her children transition from one activity to another throughout the day without behavior problems. The first essential tool that you need in your classroom is a visual schedule. Directions for using and making visual schedules are found on page 23 of our Preschool Classroom Management Guide. The black and white graphics are found on page 61, and colored graphics can be printed from the color CD that is included with the guide. The visual schedule helps to ensure a consistent and predictable routine in your classroom. The schedule is designed to be displayed horizontally with pictures at the children's eye level. The pictures should be large and easily seen from across the room. You may use Velcro to switch pictures as needed to accommodate changes in your regular schedule. The boxes with the squares of writing are intended to be used for teachers, administrators, therapists, parents, or any adult guest in your classroom. They explain what domains are being addressed during each activity block. This schedule is like a clock for your students. The concept of time is very abstract. Crafty Clown is a marker included with the visual schedule that is moved each time the children change to a new activity. Crafty is moved by the teacher, or a student can be assigned the duty of moving Crafty along the day. The schedule easily allows students to see what has already occurred during the day and helps to predict what will happen before it's time to go home. Some children will ask, "When can we go outside?" You can use the schedule to show them that right now we are in circle time, and then we will do a fun activity. After we finish cutting, we'll read a story, and then we're going outside. As you point to each picture, the visual cue will give a concrete understanding and help the child to predict what will happen next. You may want to replace Crafty Clown with a character or object from the curriculum story you're reading. Matching the character marker from the story is another way to incorporate the unit into your daily classroom routine. Besides using a daily visual schedule, children will benefit from using transition cards. They provide a simple means of getting from point A to point B. Doris needs some examples of transition cards. Transition cards can be pictures of characters or objects found in the curriculum story of the month. Let's say, if you give a mouse a cookie. For very young children, you would use the same picture. For example, if you want the child to transition from circle time to a work center, give the child a picture of the mouse, point A, and tell him to take it and find another mouse at the cutting table in the work center, point B. For older children, you can make it more challenging by asking them to take the mouse, point A, and find the cookie in the work center, point B. You can use your sequencing cards found in each unit to create transition cards. This is a great way to reinforce language skills. You can always use the child's animal symbols as transition cards. The goal of transition cards is to provide a visual cue along with auditory instructions to help children move from one activity to another, avoiding confusion and promoting positive results. Some children require advance notice before changing activities. You can say, "You have 3 minutes before it's time to put toys away." But it is much more effective if the children have a visual cue to see the movement of time. Some smart boards have clocks or devices that help children count down the minutes. If you do not have a smart board, there are many preschool timers that can be purchased for just that purpose. Another way to use both auditory and visual cues to help children transition into a new activity is to consistently use a familiar song melody to let them know that there is going to be a change in the classroom. The song that was used in our class was "The More We Get Together." For example, if you wanted to gather children for story time, you position yourself in the story time chair holding up the book. You would change the words to sing, "The More We Read Together." There was an auditory cue of the familiar music and a visual cue of the teacher in the story corner with the book in hand. Your assistant should also prompt children to gather for story time. Once they come to the area, they will have a chair or floor mat with their animal symbol on it waiting for them so they know exactly where to sit. If you wanted to gather children for snack time, you use the same melody and just change the word to eat instead of read. You also position yourself near the snack table as a visual cue to prompt the children to find their place with their animal symbol at the snack table. The Crafty Clown symbol should also change on the visual schedule. Using visual cues in your classroom will provide your students with consistency, predictability, less anxiety, structure, language development, fewer behavior issues, and positive self-esteem. Well, congratulations! You've completed Training Module 10. Now I see what you mean, using visual cues to implement class management and prevent behavior issues. This ends Module 10.